Jimmy Butler to the Brooklyn Nets? That is what we're going to be talking about on today's show. This is the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, and you might be asking, what do you mean Jimmy Butler to the Nets? No, it did not actually happen, but the rumors suggest it could happen in the next 365 days. The New York Post Brian Lewis reported just a couple days ago that Jimmy Butler might have interest in Brooklyn in 2025 free agency. Listen, Butler's going to be the second best free agency, not named LeBron James, potentially this upcoming offseason. And Lewis reported that he likes Brooklyn, according to sources close to the player. I don't know if this is fully accurate or not. I can't put my finger on that. And I don't know if Brian Lewis would have sources on Jimmy Butler's situation. Could have it with Brooklyn, obviously reporting and covering that team. But to me, it's fascinating that Jimmy could potentially be interested in the Brooklyn Nets, considering I don't really think they're close enough to be competing. So I'm not so sure this is something I would believe due to Jimmy probably not wanting to play for a rebuilding team this late in his career. We'll talk more on the subject in just a second, but make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we are going to talk about the Miami Heat on a daily basis. And with a new month becomes a new challenger. The Boston Celtics channel is challenging us to a sub battle. We're starting at 0, and we're going to see who can get the most going into October, This is also the last month of the year where we don't have Miami Heat basketball until hopefully next May and June. So make sure you hit that sub button, stay locked in for Heat coverage starting next month. I'll tell you what, the Jimmy Butler saga is very interesting, and it always has been for Miami because Butler wanted a new contract this offseason that was just an extension of his prior contract. It was a 2-year, $113 million ask, by the way, and Butler has only one guaranteed year left on his current contract. That's this season at $48.8 million. Next year, he is technically under contract for $52.4 million, but is a player option. So this is the last guaranteed year of Jimmy Butler in Miami, and then he could become an unrestricted free agent in 2026, or if he opts out, becomes a free agent in 2025. And as I just mentioned, what Jimmy Butler wanted this offseason is a 2-year extension worth up to $113 million fully guaranteed. It was the last time that he can get that 2-year Supermax extension. You might be asking why. Well, the CBA, and the new one, shout out CJ McCollum, doesn't allow players to get crazy Supermax contracts before their 37-year-old season. So Jimmy's 35, and he can't sign a contract extension going past that age 37 season, which means he has to get cash in now. And that contract extension that Jimmy Butler wants would only add 1 year to what he has played with Miami. Because ideally, you are going to see or want to have him in Miami next season, right? So the contract that he wants is only $5 or $3 million more, 55 guaranteed in 25-26, and then another contract worth about $58 million in 2026. And I just don't understand if you're only adding one actual year to the Jimmy Butler contract, why they wouldn't go ahead and do that. But what say you? Should the Heat extend Jimmy Butler? Should they already have extended J. Butt? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Get your votes down in the comment section. I would have already extended Jimmy Butler. I've been very open about that, by the way. Just go back to our coverage on the situation in May and June, early July. To me, it makes not a lot of sense to let Jimmy Butler walk, and I would have just given him his contract that he wanted to keep him happy. But like I said, it only adds 1 more year onto his contract. So it's really not that big of a risk. Like, are you going to not want him to return next year? I fully doubt that's the case. And I know Pat Riley challenged Jimmy Butler to play more games, give more effort in the regular season. I understand that. I want that as well because I am sick and tired of Miami being in the play-in game every single year. But this is one of the best players in Miami Heat history and a top 5 playoff performer as well. And that is not easy to come by and get on your basketball team. Outside of the one disastrous playoffs against the Milwaukee Bucks where Miami got swept the year after the bubble. They were banged up that year, and they lost to the eventual champions of the Milwaukee Bucks. He has been sensational in his Miami Heat playoff career, playing deep into the postseason, 2 NBA Finals runs, an Eastern Conference Finals runs. He was playing at such a high level in the 21-22 and 22-23 postseason. It really is a shame that Miami was not able to get the job done. And if they were able to beat Boston in that Game 7 in 21-22, I do fully believe they would have beaten the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals. I just think Jimmy's too good of a player in the Miami Heat history, and right now to not have him be someone on this Heat roster, and it's going to be a big-time shame if he ultimately ends up leaving in free agency, but I don't think Miami will let that happen. I'll discuss that in just a second here. But we are sponsored by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app, and it is how I play and watch sports nowadays. Join me and 5 million active members playing Prize Picks on a daily basis. It's so easy to play, and it's the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You don't play against other people. It's just you against the numbers. And you can get ready for football week 1. You can go already to the basketball world as well for season-long projections. You could actually win up to 100 times your money right now on Prize Picks with as little as four correct picks. One Caleb Williams passing yards this week, by the way, in football gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss the deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. But if you don't like football, you can already look towards the basketball season. I have a entry already. 3 players, season long, more than Bam Adebayo, 9.9 rebounds per game. I think he gets double digits again this season. More than Jalen Brunson, 6.8 assists per game. I think he's going to have a lot of assists this year, dishing out to Mikal Bridges, Julius Randle, OG Anunoby. And then the #1 overall pick down in Atlanta, Zachary Risache, less than 2.2 points per game for him. Not a fan of his game. Thought that was a reach in the draft, by the way, by the Atlanta Hawks. But either way, make your picks with Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. I've talked a lot about how Jimmy Butler is already amongst some of the greats in Heat history, and this is kind of how I have things shaken out. And I know people might be shocked and surprised by Jimmy Butler being number 3rd on my all-time list for Miami, but when you think about it, the Heat are still a relatively young franchise, only picking up in the mid-'80s and having a couple stretches where the team wasn't really that good. Obviously, D-Wade and LeBron are 1-2. I think it will always be that. I will be stunned if a player ever overtakes Dwayne Wade as the best player or LeBron James is number 2. But Jimmy Butler comes in at number 3 because as a #1 option in Miami, no one has simply done more for this team. He took the Heat organization out of limbo, out of the gutter, if you will. Like the Heat were set up to be in a bad spot for years to come, but Jimmy was able to come here in 2019-20 and then resurrect this team, making them the most competitive team in the Eastern Conference alongside the Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks. And I also have Alonzo Mourning and Bam to round out my top 5, but this is still a conversation about Jimmy, and due to the fact that I think Miami should do everything in their power to keep him. I do not want this to come out and end like it did with Dwayne Wade. And I know Wade was more loved in the city of Miami and was here longer, but I do think it's very interesting that some of these top players that have played for the Miami Heat did not have the best endings in Miami. And if it wasn't for Cleveland trading D-Wade back to the Heat, who knows how that relationship would still be between Pat Riley, this Heat organization, and D-Wade. And then the ending with LeBron wasn't the prettiest thing either. I don't want that to happen with Jimmy. I want him to stay in Miami. But on the flip side, if you do get word that he is going to leave this team in free agency and opt out of his player option next season, you cannot, under any circumstance, let Jimmy Butler leave in free agency for absolutely nothing in return. He is just too good of a basketball player to leave and you not get anything back. I cannot stress this enough. Letting Butler walk for nothing would be an absolute disaster. And now it is a little bit unlikely because even if he opts out in free agency and goes signs with another team, not many good teams out there can sign him without having to do a sign-in trade. So Miami would obviously get something in return in that scenario, but Brooklyn is not one of them. They could actually give Jimmy Butler a contract, which is why this news is significant. And I'll end on this, by the way. This is one of the most important years in the Heat's organization's history. I mean, history. I know those years with the big three were very important, but this is the deciding year to which direction this team will go in for the next 3 to 5 seasons. Because if they are not good, if they struggle this year and ultimately are 8 games under 500 late January, early February, when the NBA trade deadline rolls around, you should probably look to trade Jimmy. If you come to the conclusion you do not want to give him an extension, you think he's going to opt out in the free agency and test the waters, then you should trade Jimmy Butler. But on the flip side, if you are playing good, you have a good team, then you're obviously going to keep Jimmy Butler, maybe add to the roster, and go in to see what you can do in the postseason and then extend them in the offseason. This year is the tipping point for the Jimmy Butler era in Miami. He either is staying here for the next 2 seasons and he is going to end his career as a member of the Miami Heat, and the Heat will remain competitive in the Eastern Conference, or this will be his last, where Miami will now go to a future build with Bam Adebayo, Jovic, Jaquez, Kel'el Ware, and Tyler Hero with the young core, and look to a different trade in the future or try to add through free agency with money that Jimmy Butler leaves when he comes off the books. Very important year for the Miami Heat. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we are going to cover this season better than anyone, in my opinion, on YouTube. We go live for almost every Heat basketball game. Weekends are tough with the football season. Y'all know that. But we will also have daily coverage of the Miami Heat in between games. So hit that sub button and lock us in for this upcoming year.